Hey guys, I'm so happy to see you all here. Please excuse the hair. I am so sorry. It is quite the mess. I'm finally home from a week-long hospitalization for a bladder surgery and some complications from it. So I do look a bit of a mess, unfortunately, as you can see. But we're going to deal with that, and we're going to go ahead and start reading A Feeding Tube at the Beach from my book, Saving Destiny. Last time we left Destiny, it was in chapter 17. She had just pulled through a traumatic birthday weekend and was finally starting to settle into life at the Jackson Center, the residential treatment center that she was placed in by the Department of Mental Health. Hi, guys. And we'll begin here at the beginning of chapter 18 with Destiny's perspective. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. So we'll start right here. Does anyone have any questions to start with? Anyone? No? Okay, we'll start then. Destiny. On the day of the beach trip, I woke up super excited. I threw on my bathing suit under my clothes and then stuffed my wetsuit into a bag. You're up early, Anna, the overnight staff, smiled at me. I'm excited about the beach trip, I explained sheepishly. Something about water and the ocean always made me feel wonderful inside. After I got dressed and ready for the day, I ended up playing a few rounds of rummy with Anna while we waited for the other girls to wake up. Downstairs, all 3 staff arrived. Because all 6 girls in the house were going on the trip, all 3 of the girls' house staff were going to be coming along. We all piled into 2 different vans. I was in the big blue van that could sit up to 15 people. And the nurse rode along in the same van I went in. Normally, the nurse didn't go on beach trips, but because of how complicated my medical issues were, Jeff, the director of the Jackson Center, had insisted and had to go along and shadow me to make sure that nothing bad happened to me on the trip. My health was just too fragile, and after the whole Stephen Johnson syndrome issue, I think he was a little concerned about lawsuits. Besides, I was going to need help disconnecting and reconnecting my day tube feeds and water boluses, help taping my tubes to my stomach under my bathing suit and wetsuit, and someone to tell me when I needed to get out of the water and relax in the sand, building castles, or reading a book, or playing cards in order to get some more tube feed and water into me in between swimming and boogie boarding sessions in the ocean. I would also need a nurse there to give me my medication through my J-tube and monitor my vital signs. Some of the medications I took needed the dosages altered or needed to be skipped or added in, depending on what my heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate measured out as. The ride to the beach was long, and I could feel my heart speeding up in my chest from excitement. Anne was sitting on one side of me, and Ling, the newest girl in the house, was bouncing up and down in her seat next to me, asking everyone a million questions about what the beach was going to be like. She had been in a long-term locked state hospital for over 3 years before coming to the program, and had been in abusive foster homes before that, her entire childhood before that. So this was a whole new world for her. I swear, I started smelling the salty sea air when we got near the parking lot for the beach. The smell reminded me of summers spent in Cape Cod with my family and salt and vinegar potato chips. I breathed it in deeply. Tara took all of us girls over to the women's changing rooms to put our bathing suits on. Anne led me into a little stall in the shower room. Are you already wearing your bathing suit under there? She asked me, looking at the way my tubing was sticking out from the waistband of my shorts. I had threaded the tubing of my GJ tube through the leg of my one-piece bathing suit because there was no other way to get it on besides cutting a hole in the front of my bathing suit to allow my tubing to come out, my GJ tube site in my upper abdomen. I was just so excited. I couldn't wait to put it on, I explained to her. Well, I'm going to need you to take off your t-shirt and shorts so that you're just wearing your bathing suit, she told me. Impatient to get in the water, I ripped off my clothes. Okay, now, can you pull your bathing suit off your shoulders and roll it down so it's just covering your bottom half and I can get at your GJ site and tubing? She asked me. At that point, I was just so used to medical people seeing me naked, I didn't even care anymore. Any shred of humility I might have had as a younger child was absolutely gone now that I'd grown up going in and out of medical hospitals. And disconnected me from my tube-feeding backpack, flushed my J-tube, and then disconnected the G-tube drainage bag. This is what a G-tube drainage bag looks like. That's the grape Kool-Aid I just drank, by the way. It's really important that you don't drink any of your sugar-free clear liquids until your drainage bag is hooked back up. Otherwise, this beach trip could end up being the cause of a visor or bowel obstruction, she reminded me sternly. Then she took out a special clear dressing tape called Tegaderm. She had a giant piece of it. This is what hang on, let me see if I can get at it. Yeah. This is what a GJ tube looks like at the site. I'm going to cover your GJ tube site and tubing with this piece of Tegaderm and then a second one for reinforcement. And then have you pull your bathing suit back up and put on your wetsuit, she explained to me. I could hear the sound of the crashing surf. It was calling to me. Bouncing around excitedly, I let her put on the 2 layers of Tegaderm and immediately pulled my bathing suit back up and slid into my wetsuit. It was a lot looser on me than I'd remembered it being. Now remember, when I tell you it's time to get out of the water and hook up to some Pedialyte or tube feed on the shore for a little bit, you have to immediately get out of the water. If you don't, you will find yourself with some very severe rule violations and will be collecting ×2 until you do get out of the water, Anne warned me. Collecting ×2 meant that for every 1 minute I stayed in the water, I would get an extra 2 minutes of consequence time. I just nodded at her, knowing that as awful as it would be to have to get out of the water while I was having a fun time, I would still listen immediately. Finally, Anne set me free. With my bright yellow boogie board under one arm, and I ran down to the beach where the rest of the Jackson Center kids were gathered. A couple of them were in the water already. The water was icy cold, but the waves were so big and enticing that I couldn't wait to get in. The chill took my breath away as I waded in up to my knees. Just then, a big wave splashed over me, and I was soaked. When my head emerged, I was panting for air, but felt invigorated and more alive than ever. I waded out a little further and then scooted my boogie board into position to catch a wave. When I felt the pull of a large wave coming, I pushed off and kicked with my feet to get right in the wave. Suddenly, I was rushing forward on the crest of the wave, a mix of air and water swishing through my curly red hair. It was like I was on a roller coaster in the ocean. As I approached the shore, the wave curled down like a giant slide, and then I was rapidly skidding up onto the shore of the beach. Out of breath, I stood up and smiled. A couple of the girls and one of the boys clapped a little. That looks really fun, Kat said after watching me do it with the boogie board a few more times. It is, I grinned. I spent the next couple of hours teaching Kat, Kayla, and Lydia how to catch waves on a boogie board. It's all about the timing, I explained to them. That and being patient for the right wave to come. We took turns with my boogie board until Anne called me back to the shore and had me follow her back up to that same shower stall where she had me take off my wetsuit and pull my bathing suit down again so that she could get at my GJ tube. She threaded my tubing through the bottom of my bathing suit, just like I had done earlier in the day, and had me put my t-shirt back on to protect my fragile skin that was still in the healing process from the major burns caused by that Stephen Johnson syndrome from the hot sun. And then she hooked me up to a bolus of Pedialyte on my G-tube drainage bag. This is so you don't get dehydrated. It will run over an hour, so you can play in the sand or just relax. By the time the Pedialyte finishes, it will be lunchtime, and I'll run in some tube feeds, and you can drink one of your drinks. Then I'll disconnect you from everything again, give you meds, and retape you, and you can go back in the water, Anne exclaimed to me. By the way, guys, if you're liking this reading so far, please give it a like and a subscribe to my channel. Thanks, guys. It seemed to take forever until I could go back in the water. Lydia and I built a few sandcastles, but I kept eyeing those foamy white waves and other boogie boarders and feeling so incredibly jealous. When I finally did get to go back in, the waves were perfect. They were big enough for awesome rides, but not so big that they consistently knocked you over when you tried to wade out to where they were rising, right before they crashed. The ideal spot to catch a wave that you're going to use to boogie board all the way up to the sandbar of the beach. The water was frigid, but my wetsuit helped me get used to it quickly. I loved the rush I got, speeding on the top of the wave toward the shore. Anne pulled me out a second time halfway through the afternoon for more Pedialyte and tube feeds. But when I got back in, we even got Tara to come in the water with us. It's freezing, she yelled as a wave splashed over her whole body. Kat playfully splashed her a little more. Hey, watch it, or I'll give you a rule violation for that, Tara joked. You should show Tara how to boogie board, Lydia told me. Do you want to? I asked Tara. Sure, she agreed. I showed her how to hold the boogie board in front of her and explained how she would kick off when she felt the pull of the current starting to yank her backward. You push off and kick as hard as you can until you're on it, I explained. Tara tried a few times and got small rides, but nothing amazing. Can I watch you again, she asked me. I nodded and took the boogie board back. I latched the wristband tightly around my wrist and swam out to the perfect spot, right where the waves were just starting to curl in and crash. I waited patiently for the right one, letting the less than perfect ones give me a gentle ride over the top. Then I saw it, the perfect wave. It was just about to crash. Turning around, I gripped the sides of the boogie board and waited. I felt the water swirl around me and start to pull me backward in the undertow, and kicked off and kicked hard for a few seconds. Then I was flying through the air on top of the wave. I was rushing through the ocean, practically airborne. For a second, I was inside the wave and had to hold my breath as the foamy crest engulfed me. And then I was skidding up onto the shore again, breathing heavily. And that's how you boogie board, ladies and gentlemen, Kayla commented. Although we stayed at the beach all day, it felt way too soon when the staff told us it was time to get changed and go back to the program. This was the best day I had in a long time, I commented to Tara. I'm glad, she told me back. A pile of sand and seaweed fell out when I took off my wetsuit and bathing suit in the changing room with Anne. She sprayed me down with some type of wound cleanser she had in that big bottomless medical bag that she had brought with her. I'm going to hook you up to one more bolus of Pedialyte right now, she explained to me. And then, when we stop for dinner in an hour, I will switch you back over to your tube feed and normal water boluses for the rest of the night, she explained, as she undid the Tegaderm on my belly for a final time. Back in the car, they made me sit squished between Anne and Lydia because I was the smallest. I noticed that I still smelled like the beach. I think we all did. We stopped at a pizza place for dinner, and Anne waited just outside the restaurant with me, under a quiet shady tree, so that she could switch me back over from the bag of Pedialyte bolus to the tube feed and water bolus bag. It felt like some of the magic from the beach was wearing off already. Inside the restaurant, I ordered an unsweetened iced tea and put 2 equals and 2 sweetened lows in it. I wanted to put in more than that, but Penny wouldn't let me. She'd tell me it was rat poison and that I shouldn't be putting any of that crap in my body anyways. It just gets drained out into my G-tube drainage bag as soon as I start drinking it, so I don't absorb it anyways, I tried to explain to her. You can't be starting an argument with staff while we're off grounds. You are walking a thin borderline on getting a rule violation, Penny warned me. I took a big long sip of my iced tea with the straw the waitress had brought out for me, and didn't say anything else. Instead, I just stared at the bottoms of the booths where the red vinyl was peeling up slightly, and focused myself to avoid bursting into tears and making the situation worse for myself. If I started crying, I knew Penny would put me on timeout, and I'd get a rule violation. It would ruin an amazing day. There was no way I was going to let Penny ruin my amazing day. After dinner, Anne pulled out a bunch of envelopes and had us line up in front of her for nighttime meds. I glanced around the pizza place and hoped nobody noticed that we were all getting medication. One at a time, Anne gave the other kids their meds with some water bottles that she'd had in a cooler with the sandwiches from lunch. Then she had all the other kids open their mouths and stick out their tongues to prove that they had swallowed them. Now I really hoped that nobody was paying attention. When it came to my turn, I wanted to melt through the floor. Anne had me take off my backpack, open it up, and hand it to her so that she could shut off my pump. Then, in the middle of the restaurant, she gave me my nighttime medications through a syringe into my J-tube. I could swear everyone else was staring and whispering and wondering what was wrong with all of us. Back in the car, still squished, I leaned my head back on the headrest and let my eyes drift shut. I could hear the sounds of some of the other kids playing the alphabet game, but I was too tired to join in. If I pictured the beach in my head, I could almost feel the waves gently lifting me into the air and bouncing me around. I must have fallen asleep somewhere early along the ride home, because the next thing I knew, I was hearing the sound of the van doors opening, and we were back at the program. Sleepily, I climbed out of the van and followed Tara, Penny, and Ken back into the house. I felt an intense feeling of a letdown that I had to come back to the program after the amazing day at the beach. Over the next few days, I was noticing more and more that I felt agitated. I often felt like I was crawling out of my skin and like I couldn't stay still. I can't stand it, I finally told Dr. Tanner. You need to find a way to deal with those feelings, was all he told me. No, really? I think I need to be back on a mood stabilizer, I tried to explain. I'm hesitant to start you on a new medication right now, Dr. Tanner explained. I want to wait until all your labs stabilize. Right now, you are still very anemic and have other blood abnormalities like your liver labs. I can't comfortably start you on a new med until those labs become normal. But I can't stand feeling like this. I was practically begging at this point. When your labs stabilize, then we'll talk about it. He was firm. You'll just need to use your coping skills in the meantime. School was supposed to start soon, and I didn't tend to do well with school. I hated sitting through classes that I almost always found boring. One thing I had to look forward to, though, was my first overnight home visit. It was scheduled to take place in a week and a half. Every time I thought about it, I felt a smile break across my whole face. Because I was so excited about the overnight, I forced myself to think about that every time I found myself worrying about something else. The first day of school wasn't that bad in the end. It was somewhat hard to sit through the classes, but I managed. I did a lot of doodling in my notebooks, and I liked English a lot. The teacher, Donald, was pretty cool. He seemed to like me too. I love creative writing. My mom's a real published author, I had told him. That's awesome. We can have you do a lot of creative writing in this class, he assured me. In science, I was doing biology, and in social studies, we were focusing on the American government. In math, I was supposed to be doing AP calculus, but the teacher didn't have the textbook for me yet, since none of the other kids were even remotely close to doing that level of math. There were 2 class periods, and then lunch. The school's kitchen had a giant bag of different flavored Crystal packets and a 40-bottle case of water bottles that my mom would routinely refill. At lunchtime, I would pick out a flavor of Pedialyte, the Pedialyte, and one of the cooks would bring it out to me. After lunch, we had 3 more classes, and then the day wrapped up, and I went back to the house. Oh, I'm glad you found me, Laura. Thank you. At the house during free time, I did a lot of drawing with the new art supplies and cuddled with Blinky a lot. Blinky always made me feel better. It was so unfair that I couldn't have her outside the house. CMC just didn't get it. I tried to avoid CMC and Penny as much as possible. They always brought bad news and misery along with them. As more days went by, my agitation and anxiety levels were steadily rising. You just need to use your coping skills, Steph kept telling me. That was easy to say, but near impossible to do. But I tried anyway. I listened to my music, I squeezed stress balls, I hugged Blinky, and I drew my sketchbooks. Despite all that, my agitation just grew more and more intense. I don't know how much longer I can take this for, I admitted to Eliza. We're going to keep working with you. Don't give up, Eliza assured me. Eliza arranged for me to have extra time in the sensory room whenever I needed it. The sensory room was in the basement of Sharon House. It was painted in a calming baby blue. There was a big, huge red bouncy ball down there that you could sit in and bounce on. They also had weighted blankets, calming music, different soft brushes to run against your skin, squishy stress balls, scented lotions, different light-up toys, and a lava lamp. It was a bunch of objects that involved the senses intensely, but that also would be soothing. I would go down there with Steph and usually use the big red bouncy ball first. I would bounce on top of it until my legs burned and I couldn't catch my breath. Then I would throw my whole body onto it and bounce backward wildly. Careful, Steph would warn me. If you get hurt doing that, you'll get a self-abuse rule violation. Hold on, let me see how much longer this is. Alright, we're almost done. Hold on. After I bounced as much wire of energy as possible, I would turn the music on and wrap myself in the weighted blankets. Then I would close my eyes and pretend that the weighted blanket was my mom hugging me. A weighted blanket is meant to calm the sensory system by making you feel safe and contained. Most times, I could calm myself down by using the sensory room multiple times a day, but it didn't take away the fact that every day was a battle to stay in control of myself. What I, Dr. Tanner, and the rest of the staff at the Jackson Center didn't realize was that part of my problem was that I was experiencing a side effect from the Haldol called akathisia, and the simple 1 or 2 doses a day of a medication called cogentin benztropine would have stopped the live wire of energy. My first overnight visit was great. I loved sleeping in my own bed again. It was funny though. I kept saying going up when I went up the stairs. I would catch myself and laugh. It was so nice to be able to put up my feet on the couch and go to bed whenever I wanted. The hardest part was Sunday morning when it was time to go back to the program. I found myself packing up my stuff in slow motion. The car ride felt like a car ride back to my doom, especially since it was Penny's side of the week for staff. The rules at the Jackson Center smothered me. Only I did get back there. Once I did get back there, I felt like I was in jail. Even though there were no locked doors, I felt trapped. I really was trapped. If I tried to run away, I would be restrained. Even if I did make it off the Jackson Center campus, staff would chase me down or call the cops to bring me back. And that is the end of chapter 18. Does anyone have any questions or comments before I end this live stream? What did you think of chapter 18? Any questions, any comments, anything? I'd be happy to answer them. Anything at all. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, I love the beach. I used to love, now that I have this line, this central line, I can't go to the beach anymore. I am doing better, but I used to love the beach. Laura, yeah, I am okay. I used to love the sensory room. It helped me so much, but the staff just didn't get me at the Jackson Center. You'll see in future chapters, it gets even worse. It gets to a really bad point with the Jackson Center. People don't understand that care for complex people at all. It's so true. And the Jackson Center was meant for people with behavioral disorders. What I have is childhood-onset schizoaffective disorder, which is a mental illness, a biologically based mental illness. It's a chemical disorder that needs to be mainly treated with medication and then helped with distinct skills that are presented distinctly as presented what's the word I'm looking for? Like one at a time, very I can't think of the word, but yeah. I am feeling a lot better. I wish they'd give me cogentin a lot earlier too. It would have saved me a whole lot of issues. That crawling out of your skin feeling is terrible. It's it's like restless leg syndrome, but it's all over your body. It is really hard to understand chronic illness and chronic mental illness. A lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people don't. A lot of people understand physical illness easier than mental illness. I'm glad you can relate to me, Laura. I'm really glad. No, it's so true. I can't go to any psychiatric units anymore because of medically complex I am. If I'm having a mental illness crisis, I have to be admitted to a medical floor and have psych visit me on the medical floor because of all my medical complications. Yeah, because I'm in a wheelchair, I have multiple lines, and they all consider them safety risks. I can't be on any psychiatric units anymore. I'm so glad that you think my contributions are helping. I really hope they are. I really feel like they are. I've heard so much from people that they are. It is really difficult to be chronically ill with mental illness. Really difficult. Makes things really hard. People don't take you as seriously, and then when you're telling them stuff that you know is right, but they don't understand, it makes it even worse. Well, I think I'm going to end here for tonight. Thank you so much, guys. Look forward to seeing you at my next live stream. Love you all so much. You guys are the greatest, you guys. If you mind liking and subscribing, I would love that. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everyone.